All right, what up, guys? Welcome to the Just Pearly Things YouTube channel, and welcome to the Sit Down. Today, I have a man named Joel Webbon. Look it. I first saw you. You are one of the few pastors that I have seen that is not pushing this like woke agenda. So that's where I initially saw you. I think I reacted to one of your videos. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm honored.
Introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, so my name is Joel. My wife is Megan, and then we have 4 children, Olive and Ruth and Eleanor, and then Franklin. We got a boy. And I am in Georgetown, Texas, so about 45 minutes north of the capital, Austin. I always tell people we are close enough to Austin to where you can hop on a toll and work for Elon, but far enough away to where hopefully our police don't get defunded. Austin is terrible. But we're happy to be here. Georgetown is a small, quaint town. I pastor a church called Covenant Bible Church, and I'm the president of a social media ministry thing called Response Ministries.
Right Response Ministries. Okay. So, question, you're Baptist, right? Is that correct?
Barely Baptist is what I would say, but yeah, technically, yes, I'm Baptist.
Okay, what is the difference between that and like, 'cause I grew up Catholic, so what is the difference between that and Catholicism?
Yeah, well, really for all Protestants, a lot of Protestants are completely compromised and out to lunch, but let's say faithful Protestants, if we assume that, the main difference would be the 5 solas. So Martin Luther, Catholics aren't a huge fan, I can see why. But those were the 5 things. Before you get into the 5 points of Calvinism or soteriology, which is just doctrine of salvation, the 5 solas, sola is the Latin word for alone. So Martin Luther, he coined, this idea that it's scripture alone. It's grace alone, it's faith alone, it's Christ alone, and then it's to the glory of God alone. So the big difference between any Protestant, Presbyterian, Anglican, Baptist, the big difference is going to be that word sola or alone. So Catholics in a nutshell, I would say, and I'll just speak frankly, I think that Roman Catholicism is what I would call the plus Christian religion. The plus meaning that it's scripture plus tradition. So you see within, the Council of Trent and different Catholic, founding documents that it is 2 equal streams is the language they use. You have both scripture and tradition. So tradition is not subordinate to scripture, but they're on the same plane. Equal authority, and the Catholic Church is notorious for saying, well, the church actually gave birth to the scripture, whereas we would say that Council of Nicaea, early church fathers, that they didn't deem the scripture or give it its weight, but rather simply recognized the word of God. And so anyway, so scripture plus tradition, then they would say grace plus sacraments. Grace is not imputed, accredited to our account through faith alone, but it's infused through, the Mass, the Eucharist, through confession, all the 7 sacraments that Catholics have. We have 2. Baptism and the Lord's Supper. And then faith alone, Catholics would say faith plus works. We would say that salvation is not faith plus works, but rather faith equals salvation plus works. So it's faith alone that saves. And if you're really saved, you're going to do good stuff. You're going to obey Jesus. And then it's Christ alone. We would say that Catholics, it's Christ plus saints, Mary and other saints. And then to the glory of God alone. And we would say just the logical conclusion, if it's grace plus sacraments, faith plus works, Christ plus saints, and it's scripture plus tradition, then you can't say that it's to the glory of God alone. You have to say it's to the glory of God plus the Pope, tradition, church fathers, Mary. So, yeah.
See, I get a little, I put it, I see both sides somehow, because on one hand, I see when, like, I guess from like a Catholic's point of view, when I don't know if Baptists fall into this, so you could correct me if I'm wrong. You clearly know more about this stuff than I do. But like when they talk about reading the Bible and then coming to conclusions is like basically what I've gathered from more Protestant churches. I almost feel like that's how sometimes the wokeness gets like thrusted into a lot of these churches, because it's like people coming to their own conclusions. But then I don't know how you can not see what's been going on with the Catholic Church in the last couple of years.
No, it would be a great argument.
Make you question it when you're like, well, if this institution is guided by God, why do I have who is in charge of this right now?
You're right. On its face, it would be a great argument. The counter argument is a little guy called the Pope. who's the wokest woke. I mean, all the transgender stuff that the Catholic Church is changing its mind on, suddenly after 2,000 years, of being rooted in a certain position. And so I think the reality is that at the end of the day, I say this, it could apply to Roman Catholicism, but I say it with my Presbyterian brothers, they're like, well, Baptists, they hold to local church autonomy. So there's no ecclesiastical authority outside of that one local church. And they're like, it's easy for one local church, if there's no formal authority outside of it, to go off the rails. And I always, tease them and say, when Presbyterians go off the rails, the whole denomination goes off the rails. And I think it's the same with Roman Catholicism. In every single realm, the reality is that if society as a whole loses its mind, if the world loses its mind, then it's just going to be, one piece of the puzzle at a time compromising, or the whole enchilada, simultaneously. But at the end of the day, there is, we're talking about polity, forms of governance. There is no single, I believe that one form of polity is correct from a biblical perspective, but there is, practically speaking, no church polity that is perfectly immune to compromise.
Yeah, well, and that's that's what we're finding out with the Catholics, because I feel like, especially like when I talk to like older Catholics, they kind of thought we were immune to a lot of that stuff because we had the institution. Like my grandma passed away, but I was like, she would be rolling in her grave right now if she saw what was going on. What do you think has contributed to like just this general trend across the board of seeing churches get more and more woke?
Yeah, so part of it is going back to Protestants, like what you were saying, in terms of, it would seem on the face that Roman Catholicism would be more immune or less vulnerable to wokeness. I think there's something true there. So part of it, I think, is just subjectivism. The idea, and Protestants, I think, are more vulnerable to subjectivism. The idea of being atomistic, individualistic. We don't think of societies and cultures and nations as a whole anymore. So for me, I'm a unapologetic Christian nationalist. I'm patriarchal. I'm a theonomist. We could talk about what that means. I'm postmillennial. Lots of things that make lots of people mad. But the point is, as it pertains to this question, everybody thinks that they're an isolated atom. So thinking, chemistry, we're not molecular anymore. So I think of the family unit is a molecule, right? So like water, it's not just hydrogen, it's H2O. But we've split the molecule. What we've done in science, we've now done, in society, the same kind of principle. And so now it's no longer the family. But it's, I was looking over just even my personal family's history, and it was 15 minutes ago. We're not talking about thousands of, 15 minutes ago, you've got listed families in a town, and it says head of household. There's the man. Right. And everyone was fine with that language. Nobody was losing their minds. Nobody was offended. Head of household, whoever, Jim, Roger, and it's the husband, it's the father. And now it's not households represented by a head, but it's I'm my own person. And so when everybody becomes individual and separated from society, separated from churches, separated from families, and all of a sudden meaning and truth, instead of being transcendent and objective and universal, it becomes subjective and interpersonal. And then you begin to become meticulously introspective, constantly navel gazing, looking within, looking to yourself to find meaning.
What is navel gazing?
Just looking at my belly button, just obsessed with me. Instead of looking up and looking out, I'm like, wow, look, I have a freckle there. So.
Well, even because I did 12 years at Catholic school, and I don't even think they went over like patriarchy at all. Like I can't. If they did, I don't remember it. It must have been like a quick.
And it's kind of funny because you would think the Catholics would, because they're pretty big on the the idea of the Holy Father.
No,
Catholics talk. I mean, the Pope. He's a father. Or priest, father. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Like that. I mean, father language, and that's all patriarchy means. Just for the record, the simplest and most accurate definition is father rule. That's what it means. That's what patriarchy is father rule. So from a Christian perspective, whether you're on the Catholic side of the aisle or the Protestant side of the aisle, wherever you land, if you're within the larger banner of, Christianity, patriarchy is, I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of, and it's inescapable. Even if you're not identifying as a Christian, truth is truth. So we would start with the Father, right? Father God. We live in the Father's world, and the Father has chosen to bless people, his image-bearing creatures, through human fathers in three primary spheres, which would be familial fathers. That's the biological father in a home, families, through civil fathers, right? That's the state, the civil magistrate, which I believe should be made up of men, qualified men. And then you also have church fathers.
Women shouldn't vote, right? Women shouldn't vote.
I do not. Yeah. So I think the 19th Amendment is a serious problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't even think we should be in office. I'm like, what, you want to chick on her period?
Right. Well, and that's what I was saying.
War?
Is speaking about not even the vote, but about the office itself. Isaiah literally says so the book of Isaiah, the prophet, he says that one of the marks of God's judgment upon a people is that they would be ruled by women and children. And you look at, our leaders in the West.
Way.
Yeah. So in the West today, who are our leaders? Well, they're geriatric, they're people who, I don't even know if they're physically alive or if there's like invisible strings, and this person's been dead for 6 months and they just painted up their corpse. So they're so
right.
old, they're have dementia, barely, functioning, or they're children, right? Think Greta Thunberg telling, the whole world what to do, when she's 14 years old because she's got a feeling in her heart. Or it's women. It's not men, but it's Nancy Pelosi and this person and that person. And part of the problem with that, in my assessment, it's not because women are unintelligent or that they have nothing to contribute. For me, the problem is the way that God designed women. So again, looking at like Ezekiel and other Old Testament books of the Bible, when it describes civil rulers or describes like Rome, and emperors, and it describes them with allegorical language of a bear or a lion. They have claws and sharp teeth, whereas a woman, that's not her nature, and it's not supposed to be. Her nature is supposed to be warm, embracive, hospitable, nurturing. So I think a great example would be Ketanji Brown Jackson. So, when she was being interviewed and they were pressing on her and asking questions about her, the Supreme Court justice, the most recent one that was appointed.
Oh, they're going to roast me for not knowing this.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But the most recent Supreme Court justice, appointee who was a black woman. So it's like, well, her qualifications don't really seem to matter. It seems like we were just going for a stereotype and filling the slot. And so, but when they were pushing on her, one of the things that the big objections that was coming from, Republicans and guys on the right was, you've been soft on crime, in particular, the crime of pedophilia, that she had served as a judge for many years and had, multiple cases where there's a man who was proven to be guilty beyond reasonable doubt in a court of law for sexually abusing children. And her, she would always give, or at least there were multiple times, I shouldn't say always because I don't know every single case, but there were proven multiple cases where she gave like the lightest sentence possible. And what I would say is, that is kind of the nature of a woman. She's looking and saying, oh, this guy, I bet he had a bad mom, or maybe he had a rough life. And I would say that is a great disposition in a home as a mother with a 4-year-old. That's what you want if you're 4,
right.
But in a court of law, as a civil ruler, you want a man who will say, you did what with kids? Let's get some rope, find a tree, hang them. Like that's what men do. And that's good. You need both. You need women and you need men.
Right. Well, and that's when it's like when you get red pilled, you almost start to see that all of these women are in positions, even in like corporate America, even outside of like, just because we're women, not because we actually like deserve the positions. And so it's like, we almost like think we're more important and special and doing more than we are because they're giving us these like stupid quotas. And that's what I realized it in like women's basketball, where they basically take money from the men and give it to the women. And I'm like, they do that with us with everything, I bet.
Maybe.
And then like all the, but I don't know. it's so interesting to see it like translate into the churches, because you'd always think like the churches were immune from this stuff.
Right. They are not even close.
No.
Well, so within the church world, everything's, well, you would hope that everything would have some kind of theological reasoning. We're going to do this because the Bible says that. And in my experience, so again, and this would pertain to both Catholics and Protestants, the term is complementarianism that usually is used to define, and this would be the conservative position, which I would say is not that conservative, and I don't really like it. I don't think that it's faithful. I don't think it's biblical. But complementarianism, think complement, right? So two things that are different, right? You don't complement calamari with a second plate of calamari. You might like calamari, and so you want double, and that's great, but that wouldn't be, complement. To complement calamari, you have something that's distinct, it's separate, but it goes well with it, right? So a glass of, chilled white Riesling wine or whatever, to complement, or marinara sauce, something to complement it. It's distinct, but they work well together. So complementarianism was the theological term. It was coined by Wayne Grudem and John Piper, who were two pastors and theologians, but it wasn't coined until 1988. So very, kind of 15 minutes ago situation, very recent. And the idea of complementarianism is that men and women are different, but they work well together, hand in glove, they work in tandem, work in concert. But what happened, and this wasn't so much John Piper and Wayne Grudem, to be fair to those guys, but what happened is it was quickly hijacked by other people, and it became a halfway house between egalitarianism and patriarchy. Yeah. And so egalitarianism, everybody's equal, everybody's the same. That can apply to gender, that can apply to class, and economic, different levels of, everyone's the same. And so then that's the heart of wokeness, is this egalitarian neo-Marxist idea. So complementarianism was basically the patriarchal guys were saying, we know this is biblical, we know it's right, but feminism has crept into the world, and not only the world, but the church, and everybody's starting to go left, going towards feminism and egalitarianism. So we're going to head them off like Gandalf, on the bridge, you shall not pass, but in doing so, they, instead of saying, stay here, it's good, it's right, it's true, they said, well, we'll concede and we'll compromise with you in part, but can you at least stay here? And so complementarianism came in, and this is what theologians, the more liberal ones, not Piper and Grudem so much, but what they did was they said, well, complementarianism means that God has assigned to men and women differing roles. But what they did is they took the distinction of roles of men and women and they hung it in midair. They made it arbitrary. So it would be like this. So think of fish and birds. It's like, well, God decided in creation that birds would fly and fish would swim just because. It's like, but don't you think it has something to do with the fact of the way that he made them, their design, not just their assigning of roles, but their nature, like that fish are called to swim, sure, but don't you think it might be because they have gills and fins and scales, and birds are called to fly, sure, but maybe the hollow bone structure and the feathers and the wings have something to do with it. And so that's what happened with men and women is, well, they're called to different things, but it's not because they have different natures. It's arbitrary. It's arbitrary. They're just called to different roles because God likes it and it works well together, but it's not really stemming from their design. So then you have this mindset of the woman saying, anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you, but I won't because I'm not called to it, which quickly becomes, I will, so.
Yeah. Well, and then, that makes a lot of sense. So basically they were trying to explain it in a different way, but then it got hijacked by the people that are egalitarian.
Yes.
And then basically that's how, because I would hear I can't submit to my husband unless he submits to God. Have you heard that?
Yeah, I've heard that. Mm-hmm.
Which I guess it's like, it's true in a way, but I hear it more as used in like a way they want to control their husbands. Have you heard that or no?
Yeah. Definitely. That's what complementarianism essentially did in terms of a wife's submission to her husband is it essentially said, first and foremost, the husband's authority became the last line of defense. So meaning non-existent. Functionally, it's non-existent. So what it became was, complementary. So that guys are trying to hold on to their biblical card, right? Because they don't want to just publicly come out and say, yeah, I'm a lib. and I don't care about the Bible, and I'm woke. So guys are still, they're pretending a conservative, biblically faithful position. So they're like, oh, we're not egalitarian, we're not feminist, we're complementarian. But we just don't want to use the word patriarchy because it has stigma attached to it and it's going to unnecessarily push people away. So we're complementarian, this term that, was coined in 1988, very, very recently. And they'll say, yeah, the husband does have authority over his wife. He's the head of his wife. That's Ephesians 5, as Christ is head of the church. But in a healthy marriage with a good husband, number one, he's going to lead his wife, not just command her, but he's going to inspire her and lead her and shape her and encourage her to where she's going to be agreeing with him most of the time because he's a great leader. And if she's disagreeing, it's probably because he's a bad leader. And if she ever disagrees in a healthy marriage, there'll be little disagreement. And when there is disagreement, he doesn't just pull the I'm in charge card, the authority card. Instead, they should pause and pray and fast and consider and this and that. And if they can't get on the same page, even after pausing and prayer, then they should go to the elders of the church. And the elders of the church are probably going to take her side in most churches. So they're going to go to the elders of the church and they're going to weigh in as a third party and overrule the husband's authority in his own home and side with the wife. And if the elders, in a very rare case, which never happens, if the elders were to say, well, actually it's 50-50, a perfect even split. You could go either way. Maybe he's right. Maybe she's right. So they disagree. They seek the Lord in prayer, still disagree, seek the elders of the church. And it's a perfect split. You could go either way. Then, and in that case only, then the husband gets the tiebreaker. And in a healthy marriage where there's not a ton of conflict, the husband, that scenario where he gets the tiebreaker will probably occur over the course of a 50-year marriage, maybe 3 times. And that's the authority of a husband, which is to say, the authority of the husband is nothing.
He has no authority. How do you guys do you guys counsel couples in your church? Like, how do you
do it? If they ask for it, of course, yeah.
How do you guys do it differently?
Well, for one, I'm patriarchal. So I believe that the husband actually has authority over his wife. So when I'm stepping into a marriage, into a home, first, I want to have a sound biblical understanding of jurisdictions, right? So in the same way, part of my problem with COVID and all that, the branch Covidian crap was, that, well, wait a second. The state does not have jurisdiction in these areas, in these spheres of the church or in free markets, with businesses and this and that, or families and homes. And you have to stay in your lane. And it's the same with pastors. So a governing official in the civil realm doesn't have authority to do whatever they want in every other realm. So too, a pastor, he has ecclesiastical authority in the church. And certainly the church is made up of families, and he's going to be preaching and he's going to be counseling and all those kinds of things. But he has to be very careful of what authority does he actually have. So if I step into a marriage because I've been invited in to provide counsel, I'm going to be really careful in what the best way I could say it is distinguishing the authority of counsel versus the authority of command. I'm going to counsel, and at times counsel strongly. I really think you would do well and be wise to consider X, Y, Z. Or if it's something that's clear in Scripture, like the husband is beating his wife, God forbid, I'm not going to counsel and say, I really think you should stop. I'm going to say, you must stop beating your wife. Right. And we also are going to, because this is like a Venn diagram. In this case, spheres overlap. This is a familial issue in the family sphere, an ecclesiastical issue as members in our church, and it's a civil issue. I'm going to have to inform civil authorities. However, if it's not something that's so cut and dry, I'm going to give not the authority of a command, but the authority of counsel. But at the end of the day, the husband actually has the command. He actually has the authority. And I'm going to also be really careful. I think this is something that our whole world with Me Too, you might as well call it church too, because the church has bought into the Me Too movement, hook, line, and sinker. And here's the thing about the church. The church has not led the way in society for decades, sadly. Right. So the church is actually always behind. The wokest place on earth, I truly believe, the wokest place on earth right now is the church. The reason why is because
more than college.
I think because the world, even colleges, right. The world is already realizing, oh, that was a mistake. Yeah, I mean SNL, You watch SNL. I mean, nobody should watch SNL, but if you did, they're even backtracking and doing skits that are kind of like, yeah, maybe the woke thing's kind of dumb. Like at every level, I think people are coming off of wokeness, coming off of some of these things. But the problem is the church is always 5 years behind. So the church might have been woke last, and even that would be hard to substantiate. But let's just assume the church was woke last. Society's woke first, church is woke last. Well, the church will stay woke about 5 years after society has already realized it's a bad idea, because the church is not influential. It's too compromised, unfortunately. It has not been leading the way, leading the culture for a very long time. So all that being said, my point is just that with wokeness and with Me Too, that's how I was getting there. If a woman comes to a pastor and says, this happened, biblically, the Bible addresses this. We have clear verses in Scripture, especially in the Old Testament, that should be viewed as case law. That means it needs to be not just dropped wholesale, a 1-to-1 ratio in our society today, but you extract from this Old Testament law with Israel the general equity, the general principles there, and then you seek with prudence to apply it in a relevant, applicable way in our society today. And one of those laws is about victims, or I should say alleged victims. If an alleged victim comes and says, this thing happened, you do not immediately assume that that thing actually happened. That the reality is that in our culture, we assume that the first person to voice a grievance is the victim, when it is entirely possible that the person whose this grievance is being voiced about, if that person's lying, that's the true victim, the person who's being lied against. And so, so I go into a situation, pastorally, and I don't go in with my mind already made up that, a woman cried. I remember my dad taught me this when I was a young boy. I made a girl cry. I didn't touch her or anything like that. I just, I said something to her that offended her.
What did you say?
I'll come back to that. I'm willing to answer. But I said something and it made her cry. And she told, some of the leaders in the church, and my dad was the pastor. And so my dad's kind of getting pressure, the pastor's son, is making girls cry. And I remember he sat me down privately and I told him, but Dad, this is what I said and it was true and blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, let's be careful how we say it and this and that. And I was like, I feel like I was, and I'll try. And okay, Dad. And he was like, all right, son, I love you. And my dad's a great dad. And he was like, I love you. And a lesson just for the future. He said, you just need to know that in our current world, if a woman cries, she wins, always. And you just need to know that if you're going to have any chance as a man in life, you just need to know that this is the world we live in. And you're going to have to be shrewd, not compromised, not cowardly, but strategic. You're going to have to be wise. So what I said was basically there were rumors in our high school that this woman had done something. I don't want to be overly specific, but had done some things that are unbiblical, that would be immoral, that would be, bad. And I had talked to her with another girl. It was youth group. We were teenagers, and said, hey, like this, everybody knows that you're in our church and you're in our youth group and they're saying these things about you. And is it true? And she was like, yes. And I was like, I think you need to say something and admit that this is wrong. And because it's giving our church and it's giving Christ a bad name. It makes Jesus look bad. Yeah. And the takeaway for her was, how could you correct me? And so.
Well, I always say, like, if, and I don't know about Baptist in particular, but I always say if like the church really had wives like that, their men would be lined up to go to church. But the problem is, like, exactly what you're talking about. Like the general consensus I've gotten from guys is that they go to church and find worse quality women. Because it's like they go there to feel better after they've lived a life of sin, basically.
Okay. There's probably some truth in that.
I don't know. Yeah, like especially in like some of the like like I've heard this about what is it, evangelical?
Yeah, evangelical. And I just so you know, so it's all right. So if you think, Catholic and Protestant, underneath the Protestant banner, you would have mainline Protestant denomination, Episcopalian, Anglican, and then evangelical would be a subgroup of Protestant. Baptist would be a subgroup of evangelical. So I am technically an evangelical. I pick on evangelicals regularly because they need it. There's a lot of problems, but I am technically an evangelical. So you're right. I think to put a little bit more fine point on it, the type of evangelical church I think that is like that is your very seeker friendly, kind of trying to, attractional church. It's not a church with a robust liturgy. It's not a church with traditions. It's not a church that's preaching bold truth. It's a church that has a rock concert and smoke machines, and laser lights.
Oh, I just went to a church like that.
Yeah.
And it was so weird. It was, oh my gosh, it was so weird. And it's nothing against them. They were like very nice, but
I'm sure they were.
I was like, what on earth is this? There was a whole band on the front. I'm Catholic, so it's like, this is very, there was like cameras everywhere, and then they'd lay hands on people and they'd like fall down. I was like, what is this? I have never seen this in my life.
I'm very familiar with that. Yeah.
Oh, wait, really?
We don't do that, but I know what you're talking about. So anyways, but yeah, so the charismatic is kind of what you're describing. So the laying on of hands is a biblical principle. Even within, Catholicism, there would be a laying on of hands for certain blessings and certain rituals and ordination, those kinds of things.
I have never seen it like that. I'll say that much.
Yeah. But the falling over, charismatics would call that slain in the spirit. That the Holy Spirit has like slayed you. You've just, you're just overwhelmed by the love of God, the power of God, whatever it might be. But in a charismatic kind of circle that's big on, falling over and, or speaking in tongues, and then tends to follow with a charismatic, guys, the rock concert kind of thing. And the sermon tends to be more of a TED talk, or it's not even a sermon. It's a guy, he's sitting at a coffee table. He won't even stand up. He's sitting at a coffee table. He's got his iPad instead of a Bible and a warm cup of coffee. And I'm not going to preach at you. I'm just going to share. And he just shares. He's very relatable and he sounds humble, but everything's about him. So it's actually really prideful. And in that kind of environment, sure. The idea that there could be a lot of women there who are trying to clean up their lives, who are coming from, 7 years going to the club or whatever it might be, that totally makes sense because that church, even with their music and stuff like that, it kind of resembles the club that they came from, the way people dress even at church, right? People aren't, they're not dressing modestly, and so that would make sense that in that environment, a Hillsong would be an example, or Elevation would be, these are big charismatic seeker-friendly churches. But in that environment, to say that, and again, I won't say everyone because I'm not omniscient and don't know, but to say that there might be a large percentage of both men and women coming from sinful past, trying to clean up their life, but have been very worldly, very vain. It's perfectly reasonable. I think that's likely. However, if we're saying the church at large in general, I would like to think that if you're going to a sound, solid biblical church, that you are going to find both men and women who are genuine. They're not perfect. They're sinners. We're all sinners, but that are genuine. And, there are a lot of women, I think, in sound, conservative, traditional, churches, Presbyterian and Baptist and Anglican and this, that, and the other, that were raised the right way, have not been promiscuous, who have lived chaste lives. And there are women who genuinely want to marry a godly man and want to submit to him. And my wife is an example of that. I have an awesome wife. She loves God. She loves Jesus. She loves me. And she seeks to follow my leadership, and I seek to lead her lovingly. And I'm not trying to just domineer over my wife, but I do have authority in my home. And whenever I talk about it, I regularly upset women, and they think, "Oh, that terrible man, his poor wife and children. They're probably." But
that was my next question. Do you get a lot of pushback for these opinions?
Yeah. So I had a video that went semi-viral. It's not, maybe not the viral standard for Pearl, but for the Joel, level of viral. But basically, it was a clip. Somebody took out a clip of one of my sermons where I was talking about authority, and I was talking about different spheres. So that the state, the church, and the home. And I got to the home, and I said, at the level of the state, civil magistrates, those in civil authority, their authority is a mile wide, but it's only about an inch deep. The state does not have that much authority to tell people what to do. Get out of our business. You have some authority, but it's very limited. Your jurisdiction is small. The scope, if it's USA, 330 million people are under your authority, but your authority is an inch deep. The church, I think there's more authority, but a smaller scope. So greater degree of authority for church leaders, but a smaller scope. And then I said the family is the smallest scope, but a massive degree of authority. And I says, for instance, I have authority over 5 individuals, my wife and 4 children, but the authority that I have is a massive level of authority. And so then I said, and I gave examples. This is where I get in trouble because I try to be helpful. And so I give, not just in theory, but in practice. So I said, with my children, I said, for instance, with my children, I have the authority over what they eat, what they wear, even when they go to the bathroom. Now, my children are at the time were 5, 3, 2, and 0, their ages. So what I'm talking about is, I tell my young children, hey, go potty before you put on your jammies and get in bed. We need to go potty. Did you go potty? Like I have that authority. I wasn't saying my 17-year-old, I tell him, hey, it's 4:15.
Yeah.
So, but of course people interpret it that way because people hate me because they're feminist. And I'm talking about Christians. They are feminist and they worship women instead of Christ. And so anybody who, adheres to biblical patriarchy whatsoever, they're going to try to destroy him. They don't care if they're twisting his words. But then I got to my wife and I said, the example I gave with my wife is I said, in the case of my wife, for instance, here's an example. One day I was coming back from work and walked in the house and I saw that she was reading a book. And I said, women shouldn't be able to read. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't say that. But I said she was reading a book and it was on infant baptism, baptizing babies, paedobaptism. And I'm a Baptist. I'm a credo Baptist. So I think baptism follows a credible profession of faith. You wait. Essentially, that's the nutshell. And I said, hey, babe, don't read that. No. And I said, we want to believe what's true, whether we hold to it now or not. If we don't hold to the truth, we want to change and hold to the truth. But I don't want my wife, this is what I told her, I don't want my wife being convinced when she's married to a Baptist pastor going to a Baptist church, I don't want her being convinced of infant baptism and that being just an opportunity, a wedge for there to be contention in our marriage and division within our church. And so I said, put down that book. We're not going to read that right now. We will read it together when I have time and we'll work through it together. And I said this in a sermon, giving this, I said it in my marriage, but then I said it in a sermon, giving this example, and it got 750, like close to 1 million views. And it was all Christians who are complementarian. Most of them would say, oh, I'm complementarian. Right. Men have authority in their home. They don't believe that. They don't believe that. And so they went semi-viral and they spread it around and everybody, a ton of people stopped following me and said, he's a monster. He won't let his wife read. Where it's like, yeah, that is correct. Here's the deal. You guys all say that you're not feminist. I'm talking about church people. You say that you believe the Bible, that you're not feminist. And you'll say, oh, the husband is the head of his wife as Christ is the head of the church. But here's what you'll never do. You'll never, ever give a practical example of it. So you always keep it out in the 17th dimension of theory. Oh, yes, the husband is the head of his wife, like Christ is the head of the church. But if any guy ever gave an example of actually using that authority, you would always disagree with it, no matter what the example was. So just be honest and say, I actually don't believe the husband has authority. I'm a raging feminist. Just like the purple-haired freak, I just call it complementarianism so I can keep my biblical card. But at the end of the day, I worship women. Just be honest. We could move on.
Well, yeah, because how do they respond when you use your authority by saying no? Is the real question. It's all fun and dandy when you agree, but when you disagree, I think that's when you see who actually believes what they say they believe. But
the person who didn't have a problem, just for the record, with this whole thing was my wife. My wife loves me. She, and to be fair, my local church, you can even hear on the recording, they're laughing. Yeah, because they agree.
They get it.
They get it. They know me. They know that my wife is not being, she's not locked in a dungeon in our home. Like, and they're like, yeah, that's a good example. And the way that I told it, I was being humorous with the example. It was true. I was being, truthful, but saying, hey, no, baby, we're not becoming Paedo-Baptist. Like we'll wait, read that book together. And it was funny. It was also true, and it was applicable. It was helpful to demonstrate, here's a practical example of how a husband actually has authority in his marriage. And my wife was fine. My church was fine. But most Christians were not fine. They were enraged.
Yeah, because they'll say that she's like being abused, but she doesn't even know it. It's like
Right.
what do they say? Like Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah. Something like that.
You mentioned earlier, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, but I wrote it down. Theonomist.
Yeah. Theonomist. Theonomy.
What does that mean?
All it means is, so like patriarchy, father rule. Theonomy, God's law. So as a theonomist, I would be a general equity theonomist. It's complicated, but to simplify it, I believe that God's law should be the law of the land. So I believe that God's law is good and right and true and immutable, unchanging. It was good. If it was ever good, it's always good. That society doesn't get to determine morality, that morality is transcendent, it's unchanging, it's universal. And so as a theonomist, I would say that, three kind of classifications or categorizations of God's law, particularly in the Old Testament, would be God's moral law, his civil law, and his ceremonial law. So the moral law would be summarized most, acutely in the Decalogue, that's the 10 Commandments. So Exodus 20, 10 Commandments, have no other gods before me, do not make any graven images, don't take the Lord's name in vain, remember the Sabbath, keep it holy, honor your father and mother, don't kill or don't murder, do not commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie, bear false witness, and do not covet. So I would say that's the summary of moral law, and that's transcendent. It's not just for the Old Testament, it's not just for Israel, it's not just for these people at this time in this place, it's for all people. Whether you're Christian or not, it is for all people. God issues his law, not just to Christian people, his people, but to all people, because he is not a universal father. We're not all God's children. That's the whole idea of the Christian faith, is that you're adopted. You become a child of God. Jesus said in John chapter 8 of the Pharisees, he said, you're not children of God. The devil is your daddy. You're children of the devil. Because children always bear a striking resemblance to their fathers. You look just like the devil. He was a murderer, he's a liar, and here you are. You're liars and you're trying to murder me. So you are the spawn of Satan, literally. In words of Jesus, John chapter 8, Jesus is my favorite preacher. He gets it. So, so we're not all, children of God. We always say we're all God's children. No, you become a child of God through faith in Christ. If you don't have faith in Jesus, Jesus said, no one knows the Father but the Son, and those he chooses to reveal him to. If you don't know Jesus, you don't know God. You're Hindu? You don't know God. You're Muslim? You don't know God. If you're a Jew, you don't know God.
Does that mean you don't believe in a separation of church and state?
So, great question. Theocracy is the idea of that there is a God above the state. And I would say theocracy is inescapable. It's not whether but which. So every state has a reigning orthodoxy, a dogma, and a theos, a God. And it's not whether but which. So it's either the Christian God, or it's going to be Christian nationalism, which I prescribe to, or Hindu nationalism, Muslim nationalism, or the state itself. Well, we don't believe in any God. We're very sophisticated and developed. Great, then the state becomes God, which is what we've seen for the last 3 years with COVID and BLM. So that's just stateism, but it's still a God. And here's the thing, there's always going to be blasphemy laws. There's things that you can't say. In Germany, if I say that, I think the history has been embellished. I think it was 5,990,000 Jews rather than 6 million, you go to jail, right? So there's an orthodoxy, there is a dogma, and you're not allowed to blaspheme. So
yeah, I know exactly what that is. Yeah. Wait, so question then. So I kind of have heard this idea before, like basically there's a natural order in the world. It would go God, government, men, women, children, essentially. Some people think that government should be in that mix. Some people don't. I'm assuming you would say yes. Right?
I think it goes God. So I would not say God is top and then government and then, church. And I don't think it works like that. I think there are three human governments that God instituted. They're God's idea and they're biblical. And that is the home, the church, and the state. And technically you could say four and say self-government. Self-government would be, biblically supported by just the idea of the fruit of the Spirit, which is self-control, right? That you can, lead yourself in a healthy manner. So you could say four, but for all intents and purposes, let's say three, if we're talking beyond just one person. So family, church, and state, and they're not over one. It's not a hierarchy. So they're on
Oh,
an
so you
equal.
don't believe it's a hierarchy?
No, that's not. It's
Oh,
not a hierarchy.
interesting.
It's
Okay.
an equal plane, like a Venn diagram. And there are instances where there's an overlap in jurisdiction, where the civil government, with its God-given duties and responsibilities, has a vested interest in something going on in the home. For instance, if parents are abusing their children, physically abusing their children, then the state is like, well, this is just the sphere of our family. This is the family government. Well, I'm sorry, but you have lost your privileges and your rights. And so the state might step in. And if they're members, that family are members in a local church, the pastors should be stepping in. So there are overlap examples that can be given, but you have three autonomous, so some overlap, but generally three autonomous spheres, which are all governments. The family government, it has a head. It has authority. The church government, it has leaders, it has authority. And the state government, all three, not a hierarchy, but on an equal plane and all under God. So back to your question about theocracy, what I hold to theocracy, and I want it to be a Christian theocracy. And so,
Draw it right?
yeah, that's it. So I hold.
Your voice went up a little bit. Does that mean no?
No, it's good. It's good. But as a Venn diagram, I wouldn't have the lines. I would just draw three circles that overlap a little bit. Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay.
You know what I mean? But I don't know. Being technical.
Oh, I get it. The three ones. Oh,
Yeah,
like the
you know.
Olympic triangle. Okay.
Right, exactly. So, but all that being said, back real quick, the theocracy thing. So you asked, are you want the church and state to be connected? No, that would be an ecclesiocracy. So an ecclesiocracy would be the church running the state, or the other way around, statism, where the state runs the church. So I believe biblically, I believe in the separation of church and state. Here's what I don't believe in: the separation of Christ and state. Jesus is the head of the church, and I believe that Jesus is also the head of the state. He's King of Kings, like Lord of Lords. Have we ever stopped and asked the question, who are these lords and kings that he's king over and lord over?
So
Earthly
question,
lords.
would you then not could other people practice their religion in like this, is it a theocracy or
Yep, it's a theocracy.
Sorry, some of these words are new to me.
No, it's okay. Yes, it is a theocracy. So you're saying you have a government that has that has explicitly acknowledged a God above it. And of course, in my ideal society, that would be the triune God, the Christian God. So you would have a Christian nation with a Christian government. I don't want to change the Constitution, for the record. I would like to see an adoption, like Zambia has done recently, of a distinctly Christian preamble that doesn't just say God, but actually says the triune God, Christ Jesus. So I'd like to see an adoption of a Christian preamble. I'd like to see that. The first 10 amendments, I think, are good. I'd like to get back to authorial intent on the first, that it's not polytheism. Oh, we'll have a little bit of Buddhism and Hinduism and Islam and atheism and Talmudic Judaism and Christianity. No, it's multiple denominations of our common Lord. I don't believe that the founders were thinking polytheism. I think they were thinking, let's not be like England was and say that there's a national federal church, and if you're a different denomination while still believing in the triune God, you're going to get thrown in jail or not be able to have a license to preach. I think that was the idea of the First Amendment and freedom of worship. And then all the amendments after the first 10 we could talk about. Most of them I think are good. The 19th, I'm not a huge fan. So, all that. And then the rest of the Constitution, it follows the scripture, and I think it's beautiful. I think it's one of the best human documents ever made. So I'm not against the Constitution. My problem is that America hasn't followed the Constitution since at least the 1960s. It's a joke, and we should stop pretending. So all that being said, yes, I believe in theocracy, and I think right now we have a theocracy. Right now we don't have Christian nationalism, we have tranny nationalism. But you're going to have some form of theocracy, some God, some dogma, some orthodoxy, and stemming from that, you're going to have some form of blasphemy laws, things you can't say. Right? It's either going to be God's law or man's law. It's going to be the triune God or some secular pagan perverse God. It's going to be one or the other. And I don't want this blending of church and state, ecclesiocracy, but I do want to recognize that there should never be a separation of Christ and state. So the church and the state, two separate spheres, two separate governments that God established, and the family being the third. But above all three of those human governments, the head of the husband and the family is Christ. The head of the president or the king is Christ. And the head of pastors and elders and bishops and deacons in the church is Christ. That's not crazy. England did that. America did that. That's why the West has been so blessed. We weren't blessed because we oppressed slaves. We were blessed because we obeyed Jesus despite slavery. And now that we are abdicating and apostatizing and turning our back on the Christian religion, everything is going to crap.
Yeah, well, and I had that thought, like, who do men submit to if they don't submit to God?
Right.
It's kind of like, then it's what, money? But then I think that's kind of, because when I started researching, like, even you said that the tranny movement or whatever,
right.
It's all like it's basically just a bunch of autistic kids, and they put them on this like TikTok marketing or whatever, and they just think it's basically they sell that surgery as the answer to all of, like, women mostly sign up for it.
Right.
I know people think it's men, but it's actually women.
And it's a series of surgeries. It's not just a one and done. It's like, we got to follow up. There's an infection, and you might go back. It's like Michael Scott with The Office. Snip, snap, snip, snap.
It's a life. Yeah. It's a lifetime. You're a lifetime patient. I've interviewed some of them, and like it's really gross. It's
terrible. It's so sad. But it's gross, but it's tragic. More than gross. It is so sad for those people.
Right. Well, because they were telling me it's mostly autistic women that sign up. So it's
exploitive.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they basically sell because an autistic woman might not feel like she fits in. So, or like the things that like autistic women, because it's 80% women struggle with, they sell that as like the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Is this surgery? We'll solve this. We'll solve that. We'll solve that. When really, but when I thought about it, I was thinking about the doctors that were performing them. And I was thinking how really what they're submitting to is money.
Yeah.
Because if they submitted to God, they obviously wouldn't do that.
They couldn't do it.
And so it's like the society kind of goes. So it almost, I kind of understood the left's, I barely ever say this. I never understand their point of view, but where they have criticisms of capitalism, putting the money at the top of everything.
Okay. Crony capitalism, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of understood it because under capitalism, I guess you could argue that should be legal because they're adults. They can do it, but that's putting money above God.
Yeah, it could be. But not inherently. I don't think that capitalism inherently requires money to be an idol. So remember, Scripture says, that money is not the root of evil, but the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And all that means is that there are multiple sins that can stem out of, they can derive from greed.
Correct.
Money is not a sin. The love of money, idolatry of money, greed is a sin. Yeah. So greed, all that's being said in Scriptures, that greed is a certain type of sin that can give birth to all other kinds of sin. For instance, you can be greedy and want someone's wealth that causes you to covet, causes you to lie, causes you to steal, causes you to murder. So all these other sins can stem from that root sin of the love, not money itself, but the love of money. So capitalism, I do not believe inherently that it necessitates greed or that it necessitates idolatry. I think that capitalism unchecked absolutely, can cause problems. And we've seen that. But it beats the heck out of socialism, beats the heck out of communism. And here's the thing, socialism and communism, money is still God. So don't be deceived. Money is still God. A poor person, this is something I always, teach my congregation. You can be exceedingly poor, and you can be much greedier than a rich man. Someone who's exceedingly rich. You could be thinking about money, desiring money, wanting money, way more than the millionaire who just is going about his life seeking to steward his resources that God has sovereignly chosen to give him through his work and through human agency, and he's seeking to steward them in a godly, moral way for the glory of God and the good of people and all those kinds of things. And he has $1 billion and is not a greedy man. It doesn't necessarily, he could be, but it doesn't necessarily require him to be a greedy man. And somebody else can have $10 and be the greediest person on the planet. And in socialism, everybody has about $10. Socialism is very effective in one thing, making everyone poor. Equally poor, but poor.
Well, yeah, and even what you were saying about, because just being in my industry, I know a lot of people that got a lot of money young, and money can't buy peace of mind.
Right.
And so, like, a lot of times people think money will solve their problems, but it doesn't give you peace of mind, which, I don't know. It's interesting to talk to, especially older people. They seem to have more peace of mind than the younger generation because we're all like addicted to smartphones and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right.
What do you think? So what is checked capitalism? That's basically just when there's a law. I can't remember the exact term you said, but it's basically like when a law it goes against God's word or whatever, then they would just say no, basically.
Yeah. So in my, ideal theonomic Christian nationalism society so that's the last thing is I'm post-millennial. That's eschatology. Eschatology just means your view of the end times. Most people are dispensationalists, premillennial. They think, in other words, they think Jesus is going to come back next Thursday. It's going to be really soon, especially when you have war in the Middle East, which you always do. But, right now you especially do. So it's like, oh, Jesus is coming back. The third temple is going to get built.
The end? You don't think it's the end times?
No. Nope. I don't.
Oh, really?
It could be, but no. No, so I'm post-millennial. So what that means is that I believe so Jesus said this, Matthew 16, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So a couple things. Number one, he doesn't just say, I will sustain my church, or I will see to it that my church survives as the church is on the ropes, and Satan, and hell is wailing on the church, but the church is, barely hanging in there. And then, the all 12 rounds and Saved by the Bell, and Jesus comes in with the rapture and tags the church out and then beats up the devil. That's not my view. And I don't think that's the biblical view. I think that is a massive misinterpretation for the last, well, that movie's already been made. It's called Left Behind.
Oh, it does?
It's been made several times. It's been made with Nicolas Cage. It's been made with, so anyways, so that's not my view. My view is that Jesus says, not just I will sustain my church and see to it that it survives, I will build. It will grow. It will advance. It will increase. Isaiah, of the increase of his government, there shall be no end, not just in the life to come, not just in a heavenly sense, but I believe, this is what a post-millennial believes, I believe that Christ is emerging, will emerge victorious throughout human history, not just Saved by the Bell at the very end, but throughout human history, gradually and incrementally, progressively throughout human history through his body, which is the church, his body on earth, the church, his hands and feet. And so the last 2,000 years, here's the thing, with post-millennialism, I think it will happen first because it has happened. Things are not as bad as they were in the first century for Christians. Not nearly. We're not being thrown to lions. Now, maybe that happens again. So just like stocks, there can be dips and there could be big dips. And I think we're in a big dip. I think we've been in a dip since the Enlightenment, to be honest. So I think we're in like a multiple century. I mean, it's a heck of a dip. So, but I think the general trajectory overall for these last 2,000 years is upward. It's upward. It's been the Christianization of the world. I mean, the West there's never been anything like it. There's never been anything like England, nothing like America. We're talking about the most prosperous and benevolent. Slavery was universal, virtually universal for all of human history. And it still continues in some places and in some forms, but in large part has been abolished by Christians. The woke don't like to admit that, but the Christians are the ones, everybody adhered to slavery. The Christians are the ones who abolished slavery. And so all these different things where there's been a remarkable change, right now we're in a big dip because the West has been rejecting God, rejecting our foundation. But all that being said, I am post-millennial. So when I say I'm a Christian nationalist, back to theocracy, theonomy, your question, these are things that I believe should happen and I actually believe will happen. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen in our generation. But this is what I'm working towards for my children and my children's children. I want to see them live in a Christian nation, and I believe that it will happen. Now, that nation may not be called the United States of America. My nation could collapse if it continues to rebel against God. Right now, I think we're under God's judgment, but I don't think we're under God's judgment, meaning that the end is right around the corner and that Jesus is going to come back next week. I think we're under God's judgment, and what we've seen for 2,000 years is that nations rise and nations fall. God exalts, so the scripture says, the nation that exalts Yahweh will be exalted. The nation that exalts Yahweh will be blessed by the Lord. And so I think that over the course of human history, you see the rise and fall of empires and the rise and fall of nations. And so all that being said, with capitalism or with anything else, you want God's God's law. It's not whether but which. You're going to have laws. You're going to have rules. Things are going to be permissible. Other things are going to be off limits and wrong. And so, yeah, why wouldn't we go with God's laws? I think God's laws are best. And so you're looking at the Old Testament and the New, and you're saying this is what God has said to his people Israel. This is not just for Israel, but all people in all places. So here's one: blue laws. Blue laws, that means Sabbath laws. In the United States and in England, there were a lot of things you could not do, at least in the past and even recent past, on the Lord's Day, on the Sabbath. Well, how does that affect capitalism? Well, one of the reasons why little guys continue to just get destroyed, small mom and pop businesses, is that you cannot compete with behemoths, with leviathans like Amazon, House Bezos, and House Gates, and these things. And part of the reason is because they never sleep. They've got all these worker bees and all these different things. Right. It's every second of every minute of every hour of every day. It's 24/7, 365 days a year. But to say even online that the day of the Lord, the first day of the week, the day that Christ rose from the dead, shall be the Christian Sabbath, as we have in our confessions and in our creeds for 2,000 years. This is what Christianity has held and the West held. And they didn't just do it privately in churches. It was society. It was the whole nation. You will not buy and sell on the Lord's Day. Now, that doesn't mean mandated church attendance. Doesn't mean that if you don't go to church, you go to the gallows. But it does mean the marketplace is closed. And if somebody in the marketplace chooses to buy and sell, that there will be some kind of penalty. There will be a fine or something like that. You're going to close the marketplace. Now, one of the things that happens practically, you do that because you want to honor the Lord. But in honoring the Lord, his laws aren't just morally right, but they're beneficial and good. So the things that God says, hey, this is the right way to live, it's also not just bringing him glory, but good for people. And one of the implications of a law like that is that these Leviathan, behemoth, institutions and companies would level the playing field for the mom and pop, right, that one day a week, everybody's got to stop business. And it would give more of a fighting chance to the smaller business trying to grow. So that's just one example of, God's law and how it would work in, the realm of capitalism, which is what you asked.
So how do you mentioned earlier in the interview that you're like hopeful for the future?
Yeah.
I'm curious why, because when I look at this numbers, I look at the birth rate,
yep,
the general trend of society to the left, the amount of people that like practice religion, like all of the stats that I would even like crime is going through the roof now.
Yeah.
I don't see much to be like, wow, I guess maybe it can't get that much worse,
Oh, it can.
But
it can.
No.
Okay. It can, unfortunately.
But at least in my lifetime, I've really only seen things get worse. Like it's really weird. Because I'm 27. So when I was younger, like even just the quality of like, I see more homeless people everywhere. I see more crime everywhere. I'm from a family of 10. You don't really see that anymore. Right. So what makes you like hopeful for the future?
Great question. Yeah. So I absolutely think things can get worse. But I think that the overarching trajectory will be better. So that throws people off. They'll be like, are you just naive? Do you have your head in the sand? Did you take the blue pill? And it's like, no, I took the red pill. But by the grace of God and through the scripture and the Christian faith, I followed the red pill with the white pill. And that would be probably one of my strongest encouragements to you and to a ton of people who listen to podcasts like yours and mine in the red pill kind of world is we don't need to be like Theoden, right? The ruler of the Rohinians, and the Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, and he's like completely overcome by Saruman the wizard, and he's just like lifeless. There's no blood in his veins. He's a corpse, just barely sitting there, and behind the scenes you've got Saruman, the wicked wizard, pulling the strings and making him say this and making him say that, and then finally he like comes back to his senses, Gandalf, frees him from the spell. He comes back to his senses, but then he's red pilled, but he black pills, and it's just like there's no hope. Everything is lost. And then Aragorn, he is encouraging him, saying no, and then finally, the big white pill is okay. So maybe we all die, but if we do, the horn and Rohan will sound once more. We will ride out to meet them. We're gonna go down fighting. Like we're gonna We're going to go to war.
Right.
We're going to give it everything we got. And then Gandalf, comes over in the last minute, the mountain with shining light, and reinforcements, and they win. They actually win against all odds. So first, things can get worse. But in the big picture, I believe I think things are going to get worse. I think they're probably, if I had to guess, going to get significantly worse. I'm not excited about that because I have kids. And I'm deeply, as a father, deeply concerned for my children. And they may have to move. And so already I'm doing my best to store up wealth. The Proverbs say a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So a good Christian man seeks to plan for the financial well-being of at least 2 generations after him, all the way to his grandchildren. My kids may have to move to some other place. Maybe Elon can get them to Mars, or maybe they go to Zambia for a little while.
Texas might secede.
Yeah, Texas may secede. So that would be awesome. But my point is, things could get worse.
I would move there if they seceded.
Yep, amen. So things might get worse in the short run. And when I say the short run, I don't mean 2 months. I mean it could be 70 years. But in the long run, here's what I believe. From the scripture, I will build my church. Jesus says that, Matthew 16, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So one, he's not just sustaining the church, it's growing. Secondly, this is the other part I didn't get to, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. The gates of hell are not offensive weaponry. It's not artillery. The gates of hell are the defensive measures, not of the church, but of hell. Hell's on the defense. Hell is on the ropes, and Jesus Christ, head of the church, is using his church on earth as his battering ram, and he is going to knock down the gates of hell, and it's not going to win. So worst case scenario, this is how I see it. Worst case scenario, the West completely falls, and good riddance, we deserve it, under God's judgment, because we have completely rebelled against God. The West falls, but the whole world won't. Uganda and Zambia and these places that right now in our hubris and our pride, we laugh at. We say, oh, that's so dumb. These primitive third world, whatever. But the developing world that is adopting Christian preambles to their constitution, that is saying, yeah, we're not going to stand for perversion, and that is actually having Christian laws and these kinds of, and we say, oh my gosh, it's so archaic and it's so extreme and I can't believe it and blah, blah, blah. We're going to continue to be under God's judgment as we continue to be proud and perverse and rebellious. And God will do what he has done for 2,000. It's not new. Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. What's been done before will be done again. We think it's new because every generation thinks that their generation's unique and new. Sure, the internet is new. I'll give you that. Social media is new. Right. But with the Reformation, what happened with Catholicism, and Luther and all, it's because God tends to do this. He teams up profound reformation in culture with innovation in technology. So the Gutenberg printing press was radical, like the internet for its time. And so the Gutenberg printing press was at the same time as a little guy named Martin Luther. And the Catholic Church at the time, even if you're Catholic now, you got to admit that the Catholic Church at the time selling indulgences, making people pay money to get their loved ones out of purgatory, it was not a bright and shining moment.
You're not supposed to sell forgiveness?
Yeah, you're not supposed to sell forgiveness. So it was not the brightest moment for Roman Catholicism.
Right.
And my point is, so here's this guy, and he disrupts this ironclad institution that was impenetrable. I mean, they had a monopoly on society, wealth, the truth, everything. But God brings one guy with reformation and in the realm of technology, innovation. And those two things happen simultaneously. I think that what we're experiencing, and it's cool. It's exactly 500 years later. Exactly 500 years later from the Reformation, I think that we are experiencing another Reformation teamed up once again with an innovation. And at first, this is what happens, is that things always get messier first. So with the dawn of the internet and podcasting and videos and social media, well, what you get is 3 million different opinions from the peanut gallery. You, me, and everybody else. Yeah. But eventually, this is what you also get. You get the crumbling of corrupt institutions that before were undefeated. They could not be taken down. And now Tucker can go with Elon on Twitter, one guy, and mop the floor with Fox.
Yeah.
And so my point is, it's going to take time, but the truth is going to come out. And in a worst case scenario, the West will fall. But the rest of the world will look at that and say, what did they do that ended so poorly? Oh, they hated God. They loved perversion.
I guess what
They,
makes me a little bit more pessimistic is I'm in London, so I deal with a lot of people that are like from I don't know anyone from Zambia in particular, but
right.
more of the countries that are supposedly like more traditional, and like they kind of complain about the same problems that we do. So like I know in Africa, Zambia, that's in Africa,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
I know they're like they have issues with like paternity fraud. A lot of them, I know their STD rates are through the roof. I know in Asia, their childless women are through the roof. Their like birth rates at 0.5 or 0.6, I think, in South Korea. So
Well, South Korea,
Eastern
that would
Europe,
make sense. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, yeah, in Eastern Europe, I don't know if it's still the case, but I know their abortion rate was pretty high. So it seemed to be like they all have very similar problems to the West. And one thing I learned when I came to England was our problems weren't as unique in the West as I thought. Really, I just see the other countries as like 10, 20 years behind.
Yeah. Well, agree to disagree.
Yeah.
You may be right, but like South Korea, for instance, I see them as the Asian wing of the
Like
West.
Japan too.
The same as
Yeah.
Israel. Israel is Western. Like it,
Oh,
Japan is
okay.
Western. I view so when I think of non-Western Asian countries, I'm not thinking of Japan or South Korea. And when I think of Africa, I don't think that that's true of Africa. So certainly they don't have some of the medical technology and advancements that we do in the West. And so there are certain diseases that have not been fully eradicated, although things have massively improved over the recent decades for the whole world, including Africa. But there are obviously a lag when it comes to medical advancement and those kinds of things. But in terms of morality, I don't think that African nations like Zambia or Uganda, I don't think that they're merely 20 years lagging behind the West. I think that they are. I know that they are. I've seen videos, and I also there are some faithful ministers like Conrad Mbewe and Vodi Bakum, who are in Zambia, starting, they've been working on a seminary there and, planting churches and doing really good work. And, and I've spoken with them, and Zambia is hopeful. There are problems in Zambia, to be sure.
Yeah.
But Zambia is hopeful, and they're not just 20 years, they're not your typical Western conservative who is whatever the libs, whatever victory the libs experienced 20 years ago, we're going to conserve that. No, these African nations are, and places in South America as well. They're saying, they're laughing at us. And that's good. Mm-hmm. That's encouraging that they're laughing at the West with its, with sodomy, transgenderism, abortion.
Oh yeah, no,
what is a woman?
The trans stuff will never go there.
Never.
That'll never.
Never.
But I just meant like with more the like breakdown of like women are less traditional there. It's like I'm getting the same because I interview about mostly like relationships, like gay, like that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So it's just we get a lot of people that are from not Zambia. I will say disclaimer, I don't know anyone.
Is it South
Zambia,
Africa? Because that would make sense if it was South Africa.
South Africa, Zimbabwe,
maybe?
South Africa, Zimbabwe, Nigeria,
Okay.
Kenya. So it's kind of like I'm finding a lot of like similar trends.
I'm sure you're right. I have no reason to discount that. I think, and I think it's probably because, and I think this is what you're saying, because of the West influence, right? So everybody wants to be, Americans are cool, and England is not quite as cool as America. We became cooler about, I believe in 1776, but all that being said, I think, that most of the world looks to us as an influence, and we're a terrible influence currently, but I don't think that that's going to continue to be the trajectory, because here's just my overarching point. If we pan out, get the 30,000 foot view, right? And you're doing this, you're looking at the world. I would just add one more element. Don't just look at the whole world instead of one nation, but also look at the whole timeline, and not just one time period. Over the last 2,000 years, it is incredible what God has done all around the world. Life is better. It is.
That's true.
Recently, things have again, we're being stupid right now and making things pretty bad. And sadly, I think we could make it even worse. But on the whole, I mean, you're talking about lifespans almost doubling. for the vast majority of the world. You talk about slavery, you talk about war, pirates on the open sea and being able to do free trade. You talk about prosperity and markets and then, of course, for me, coming from a Christian perspective, the advancement of the Christian religion. And right now, the Christian religion is not in its prime. Right now, it's not looking great. But overall, I mean, the math is real simple. Jesus started with 12, and now we got a couple billion. I feel like we're heading in the right direction.
So you think it'll just go down for maybe like 50 years, but then the overall trend will be up. We're just in a dip.
And I wouldn't put money on the 50 years. It could go down for 250 years, or it could go down for 5 years, and we could have a great revival. But that's what we've seen throughout human history. In the West and in other places. I mean, I'm an American, a Christian Reformed American, a Calvinist, and so I think of the Great Awakenings and George Whitefield and going up and down the coast and thousands of people coming to Christ. I think of the Puritans and the Covenanters. I think of New Hampshire and they had covenants with the triune God. This is before 1776 and individual colonies. I think it was 10 out of the 13 colonies expressly called themselves Christian colonies and had a covenant with the triune God. Christian laws on the books. We're not talking about the hypothetical of something maybe one day happening. We're talking about the possibility of what has already happened in history happening again. And the whole idea of things getting worse and worse and worse, I feel like only strengthens my point, because I think one of the ways that people repent is by having to take their own medicine, by having to lie in the bed that they've been making for themselves. Like one of the most compelling things. So the prodigal son, very famous parable that Jesus told.
I love that one.
Beautiful. And so it says he's off in a distant land and a famine hits, right? So he's rebelled against his father. He spends all his money on loose living. So it turns out, it's not just that it's not just that girls can be licentious, but here's a dude being licentious as well. And he spends all of his money, and then he's in a distant land, a famine hits, it's hard times, he's got nothing left. He hires himself out to be a servant of a farmer to feed pigs. And things are bad when it says he's looking at the pods, the pig food, and says, that looks pretty good. And then it literally, so he's at the end of his rope, bottom of the barrel. And then it says, in that moment, it says, and no one gave him anything. And then the next words in the text is, and then he came to his senses. And he said to himself, the servants in my father's house have it better than I. I should repent. I should go back. And so my point is, the worst thing I think that could have happened for this young, stupid man in that moment is if a member of the father's house, in the name of empathy, unbridled empathy, had gone to find this young prodigal son and give him a handout. The thing that got him to repent and go back to the father and apologize and express was the consequence. Yeah. And the West, I think that we're just getting started with the consequence. And I think as we experience the consequence more and more and more, as the chickens come home to roost for transgenderism, I mean, you're talking about people, we've barely begun to scratch, the surface of, you're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who in the next couple of decades, 10, 20 years, they're going to be furious. Yeah, like we haven't even seen the consequences of COVID yet. We haven't seen the consequences of the vaccine yet. We haven't, there's so many things that are going to be coming back to roost, and people are going to be like, oh my goodness, what did we do?
I did a poll on Twitter asking how many people, if you personally knew someone that died of COVID, or not of COVID, of the vaccine. Right. And 40% of people, and I think this got over 10,000 votes. So it was a decent, 40% of people know someone that died from the vaccine. So it kind of tells you, that they think it's not a scientific.
Right. But still, that's something. So whether it's indoctrination of children in state schools, whether it's abortion, which I believe is the murder of children in the womb, whether it's transgenderism, whether it's, LGBT, LMNOP, the rainbow jihad, whatever it is, in all those ways, through COVID, through medical tyranny, through state tyranny, through lies of legacy media that are already crumbling around us, in every single way, every major institution in the West, the state, the media, medical, the family, sadly. The church, sadly, is no exception. Every single one of them has chopped off the limb that they were sitting on. They've completely discredited themselves, proven their corruption, and the proof keeps coming. The receipts keep coming, and we're going to get bigger receipts. It's not going to tail off. It's going to snowball and speed up. And as that happens and people experience the consequences of polarization, potential civil war, potential World War III right now, with all these different things.
Right.
Yeah, the verdict is still out, but it is coming in. And I think that the overarching verdict, when it's all said and done, is going to be this. You rebel against God, you find out.
So what would be your prescription if you were in charge tomorrow? What would you do?
National repentance. I believe that nations, particularly in the West, if I was in charge, if I was, president, one of my friends.
I could see you running. You kind of have that like way about you. Have you ever thought about running?
For president? No.
I don't know, just like for some political office. I could see it actually.
That would be cool. Maybe. That's something to pray about. Consider. Thank you. That's encouraging. But yeah, if I was president for, and what a glorious 3 days that would be. A friend of mine, Doug Wilson, always makes that joke. It would only last probably for 3 days, and then I would be probably banished or exiled or assassinated or something. But in that whatever hypothetical situation, I would call the whole nation, like it would be a national repentance. So we would come. Now, in our current system, there would be difficulty, and here's another thing. This doesn't go over well, but I'm not the biggest fan of democracy. I like a constitutional republic, a representative republic. That's back to the 19th Amendment. It's not just, I don't think women should vote because they're not geared that way. It's also because I believe in representative government. Right now, in my county and in my state and my nation, there's a ton of people who are representing me, whether I like it or not. That's representative government. That's the way things work. So it wasn't that women didn't have a vote. Women always had a vote by virtue of their husband or their fathers, as a wife or a daughter, through the household vote. One of the things the 19th Amendment did was it split the household. It turned the household against itself, going from the molecular model, the household being the smallest building block of society, to individuals. And so all that being said, if I was in charge and it was a monarchy, and I was king for a day, not just president, I would say we need to fast and pray like the king of Nineveh when he heard the preaching of Jonah that judgment was upon the city of Nineveh. We need to fast and pray. Nobody's going to eat. No one's going to drink. We are going to pray. We're going to wear sackcloth and ashes. We're going to get Congress or whoever, Parliament, whatever the body, we're going to get them together. We're going to write up a Christian preamble. In it, we're going to declare allegiance to the triune God, to Jesus as King of all kings, King of me and King of this nation. We are going to make God's law. The Bible will be the law of the land. It's going to be, it's not simple, it's complicated through courts and the judicial system. It's going to have to be prudently applied. So for instance, you must have one Old Testament law. You have to have a parapet, right? It's a border. It's a balcony. Like if you have a balcony, you got to have railing on your roof for Old Testament Israel. But why? Well, in their culture, people slept on top of the roof. They don't have HVAC, AC. During the summer months, they would sleep on top of the roof because it would be cool and there'd be a breeze. Now, here's the way they enforce it. They didn't have police going around and writing fines if you didn't have this border around your roof. Instead, what would happen is it was punitive, not preventative, right? Not like a Minority Report with Tom Cruise where you try to see the future, who's going to commit a crime, and you over-police everything like Australia, New Zealand. No, it's punitive. The way that you get justice is that when injustice is done, the penalty is swift and severe. Swift and severe. So if you don't have a border around your roof, you don't get penalized. But if somebody rolls off your roof and dies, it's proportional, it's swift, it's just, it's eye for eye, tooth for tooth, life for life. They fall off and they die, you get the death penalty. And publicly, you're going to be stoned and put to death. And even stoning, it wasn't for the sake of being brutal. It wasn't brutality. The point of stoning was to say that you have sinned against all of society. And so all of society will have a hand in justly punishing you. All society. And one of the things that Old Testament scripture, another law was, you shall not pity the rich, show favoritism to the rich, nor shall you pity the poor. Justice is blind, right? If you have to figure out what color the cop is and the alleged perpetrator before you can decide what's just, you're not doing justice, right? If it's not proportional, this person commits murder and they get a slap on the wrist, it's not justice. If it's delayed and happens 20 years later, it's not just. It's swift, unbiased, proportional, all these things, and it's reactive, punitive, not preventative, where you have this massive police force, which means less taxes, because the police force costs a lot of money to employ. But the punitive, a gallows is cheap. So all those things being said, my point is, back to the roof border thing, you take that biblical case law, you apply it in 2023 in America or England. What does that mean? You have to have a border around your roof? No. But what it means is you must esteem life. It stems from the 6th commandment, thou shalt not murder. So it might look like speed limits on a highway. It might look like seatbelts. It might look like this. It might look like that. And then how do you enforce it? You like the Autobahn, right? You don't have all these regulations, but what you do is if someone does cause harm to someone else, and they were going above the suggested, it would be suggested speed limit, and it's proven they were going above the suggested speed limit. You don't have a million cops going around giving speeding tickets, but if they get in a wreck going above the suggested speeding limit, so it was their fault, and they kill someone, and they survive themselves, to the gallows. And it's public. It's on the county courthouse. It's the whole society has a vested interest, not because we're morbid, not because we're sadistic, but because justice belongs to the community. And we all need to be committed to carrying it out. So all that kind of stuff, the Bible would be the law of the land through judicial system, using prudence and strategy and wisdom of how to actually apply that in our time, our place, our technology, our cultures. But still, the general equity, the general transcendent principles of biblical law, 3 days of fasting and prayer, adopting a Christian preamble, and, I'd be fired by the end of the week, but it'd be great.
What do you do over at Right Response Ministries?
Podcasts. So my day job is I'm a local pastor. So I pastor Covenant Bible Church in Central Texas, north of Austin. And then beyond that, and everything that I do as a husband and a father, Right Response Ministries, I'm trying to, because I feel called, and maybe not. We'll see what God does. But so far, He's blessed it. But I feel called to beyond just my local church. My local church is my priority, but I think the church kind of sucks right now. And so I'm trying to help out. And so instead of just preaching sermons in my church, I'm hosting, weekly podcasts, and like yourself, I have guests come on, guys that I think are also doing a similar, good job and actually have a spine, actually have, some courage and are willing to, say, yeah, feminism is demonic and it's bad, and let's call it what it is, or this or that. And so so doing that, doing podcasts, getting my sermons beyond just the local church, trying to write a book from time to time, or, and holding a conference. We try to hold an annual conference. So I got a conference coming up in March that's this exact, what we're talking about. It's theonomy and postmillennialism. It's Christian nations, and, gotten a lot of pushback. A lot of people are saying, Christians, of course, it's always Christians saying, this is a terrible conference. This is worldly. Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world, which is so silly. I always, Jesus did not say his kingdom was not in the world, but not of the world. What he's saying is that the power and authority for his kingdom is derived from another source. It is a heavenly power greater than the world. But he's not saying that he doesn't care about his kingdom being in the world, which is precisely why when Jesus taught us to pray, he said, pray thy kingdom come to this world. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, not just in the 17th dimension, but on earth as it is in heaven. So these are basic things that Christians understood. Christians understood the civil realm until, again, very recently, really since World War II. The post-war consensus has been terrible.
Wait, why is the conference considered worldly? Like they don't like conferences
because we're saying that politics matter. We're saying that culture matters. We're saying that that markets matter, that starting business. The whole idea, so the conference, the title is Blueprints for Christendom 2.0. So most Christians today, especially in the Protestant realm, they're pietist, meaning the only thing of any value or worth at all is the spiritual, the unseen. Right, so it's all inward. It's a privatized lordship of Jesus. Instead of Jesus being Lord of Lords and King of Kings, Lord of all, Jesus is Lord of my cute, precious, private, emphasis on private, heart. Jesus is Lord of my heart. Instead of, no, Jesus is Lord of all. And so we're talking about the Lordship of Christ over every aspect of life. not just our private heart and not just our private family with our marriage and our parenting. Christians will do, here's a parenting conference. Here's another parenting conference. Hey, our 17th parenting conference is coming up. Don't miss it. But that's all it is. It's your private devotions. You snap a picture of your coffee mug and your Bible and post it on Instagram. So Jesus' Lordship is in my 15-minute private quiet time in the morning. And it's maybe beyond that, it's in our private home. And we're saying, no. Jesus is King of nations. He's King of markets. He's King of media. He's King of medicine. He's King of everything. It will be done his way. You have two choices, Christ or chaos. So blueprints for Christendom 2.0. Not Christianity 2.0. It's the same faith once and for all passed down to the saints. The Christian faith, the historic creedal Christian faith. Christendom 2.0. So think Constantine, King Alfred. We're saying, Christendom, we've been lied to. The Crusades. So here's one. God's Battalions. It's the name of a book by Rodney Stark. He gives a history of the Crusades. Turns out, like most things, we've been lied to about the history. That doesn't mean it's all perfect, but there was actually some really good reasons for the Christians and their side and their battle in the Crusades against the Muslims. At every level.
I haven't studied it. I've heard that though. I haven't studied it myself, but I've heard that it's like they always rewrite history the way they want.
The victors get to rewrite history. We just need to know what time it is. Right now, the victors are the pagans. The godless pagans, leftists, socialists, communists, globalists, they're the victors. And the victors get to indoctrinate the society. They're the ones who get to rewrite history. And that's what we've seen. And so we just need to be asking questions. We need to go back and think, what did our ancestors, the overarching thing that's trying to be done right now, the play, is to try to get young Western civilization to hate its heritage. To say that our heritage was just a bunch of slave owners and, the Spanish Crusades and colonizers but it's like,
I've gotten that one before.
Right. But it's like, okay, so Great Britain colonizes India and again, everybody's a sinner. So none of it is perfect, but it's like, I'm sorry. So we're going to go into India and say,
I've been told I'm the colonizer, I guess.
Yeah. So, but think about that. You go into India and you say, I'm sorry, you can't bury your wife alive with a husband when he dies. Sorry to colonize you. Sorry, is that an inconvenience? Or you come to the Americas and you say, okay, guys, there's a few things that we need to change. Number one, let's stop eating each other. Sorry to be an oppressor.
Yeah.
The
they never talk about
exactly. All that becomes the footnote of history.
It was the Aztec, right? Didn't they sacrifice
Aztec,
people to the
Mayans, Karankawa Indians, where I'm at in Texas, they were cannibals. It was terrible.
Well, and most of them died because of disease anyway.
Right, that's right. It wasn't even close to gunfire, but disease. And even with the gunfire, there were, again, problems on both sides. So anyways, all that being said, the point is this, Christendom. So not Christianity 2.0, the one Christian faith, Orthodox Christian faith. But Christendom is the idea of Christianity in its outward expression in every realm of society. That's Christendom. And so what we're saying is Christendom was not a bad idea. That there were problems, but we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are features and there are bugs. And so what we're saying is blueprints, the title of the conference, Blueprints for Christendom 2.0, is we're saying we want to get back to Christendom. All of Christ for all of life. It will either have Christ or chaos. We want Christianity to be public, in the public realm, nationally, politically, culturally, everything. But we'd like it to be Christendom 2.0, meaning all the features of Christendom 1.0, but I think we can do better. Let's try to get rid of some of the bugs. So the things that actually were, not just blatant lies and slander, and revisionist history, but things that actually were a problem with, whether it be King Alfred or whether it be Constantine or whether it be the Crusades or whether it be this or whether it be that, the things that really objectively were problems. Here's the question implicitly that's begged. Why were they problems? By what standard? Were they problems because God's word would say that they were immoral, or because we just say they're immoral? And if they're actually problems, objective problems, not by our fluctuating moral standard, but by God's immutable standard, then guess what? We need to Christian nationalism even harder, not less, right? If slavery was so bad, by whose standard was it bad? And if it's bad, objectively, universally bad, then it's only bad because of God's standard, which means we need more God not less.
Right.
It's simple.
What's your book about? Is that what your book's
Yeah,
about?
well, the book is why I left California. So the book is saying, I think that one of the
Oh,
ways
you're Californian?
no, I was born and raised in Texas, but I moved there for 10 years and planted a church.
Oh, okay.
So
then
I came back for a host of reasons, and it's a long conversation. But basically, the book is just saying, I think one of the ways that we win, instead of the fight or flight reflex, I'm saying advocating for a third strategy of fight by flight. That one of the ways that we can fight against leftists, and pagans and God-hating society is places that are really blue, really progressive, really rebellious towards the principles of Scripture. Vote with your feet. Get out of Dodge. Stop propping it up. I think one of the reasons that California has the illusion of being able to last as long as it has is because the salt of the earth props it up. This, statistically, there are 42 million in California, total population. 16 million are professing Christians. If they left and just said, to Governor Gavin Newsom, that's enough, we're out. California would actually have to, like the prodigal son, I use that as an example, he would have to deal with the consequences of his godless policy, and California would crumble in a fortnight. And yeah, and then eventually, and that's, I think that so you asked me earlier, like how am I hopeful, and I gave you kind of the global scale of nations, but as it pertains to my country, I think you could have the minor scale with states. That, like, if people continue, right. And that's happening. That trend doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. So if people continue to vote with their feet and they're like, yeah, you've lost your minds. We're leaving California. We're leaving New York. And we're moving to Texas. And what'll happen is economically, culturally, all those things, red states will get redder, right? And they'll get better. They'll increase with wealth and prosperity and all those kinds of things, and blue states will get worse and worse and worse. And that right there will be used, I think, as an evidence to people saying, okay, so one set of systems works, another one doesn't. Oh, and this one, what a coincidence. This one is more conservative and aligns more with Christian values, and that one. So, and whether that we're able to do that in 50 years, or even 15 years with states at a micro level, or whether that takes 250 years with, all the way things getting so bad that, people are going to the gulags at a international level. But one way or another, I think that system, that history will prove who's right, and God's right. You want to be on the right side of history, believe the Bible. Because history gets revised, every 50, right. 60 years. So all you have to do is so right now, people think I'm crazy, but all I have to do is say, I'm a theonomist, I'm a Christian nationalist, I'm patriarchal, and I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm not going out of my way to jab and poke. But this is what I believe. Here's my reasons for believing it. I'm not just trying to be mean, but the Bible says it. I think it lends towards the glory of God and the good of people, including women, including children, including this, including that. And you know what I have to do to prove that I'm right? I need to just sit and wait for about 15 years. That's all. All I have to do is just wait.
Well, and the thing is, the stuff they're pushing is very confusing.
Yep.
It doesn't, they'll act like they're pro women, pro minorities, pro all this stuff, but it's very confusing to grow up in a society that's telling us men are women, women
right.
are men. Cause I'm the youngest millennial. So I grew up I feel like when there was peak woke, was during my teenage years. I see it kind of like when Caitlyn Jenner got that award.
Right.
You remember that.
Yeah.
I remember being in school and everyone talking about it. It's very confusing, growing up when it's even the institutions you go to are telling you the wrong thing.
Right. Well, yeah, transgenderism is really, in some sense, it could be defined as this. It could be defined as the white man's secret weapon to still find himself in power. So it's funny with all the wokeness and white people and white men are right. oppressive and all this kind of stuff. But then you throw in transgenderism, and then what do you get? Well, at the end of the day, you get a white male winning woman of the world of the year award, or you get a white guy who's more oppressed now than this minority person. At the end of the day, transgenderism carved out a vehicle for the white man to still find his way on top. And so it's a bit ironic.
Well, where can the people find you?
They can go to Right Response Ministries on YouTube. That's where most people follow us. We don't have 2 million subscribers, Pearl, but Well, I like to think we're on our way. We've got about 75,000. So they can
Yeah,
go to
no,
YouTube.
you guys are doing well. You're
Thanks.
doing well.
I appreciate it.
That's where they can find you. Can I go to your church next time I'm in Texas?
Absolutely. Yeah, we would love to have you. And the nice thing about you visiting our church is I can expect that you'll dress modestly. I've seen you on Twitter.
You've seen my Twitter.
Your Twitter feed. I was like, it's like, surely she cares about modesty. So, but no, I would love for you to come and attend our church. And it's called Covenant Bible Church.
Yeah, well, and I'm not even, the modesty thing, I'll tell you.
Go ahead. Yeah,
because sometimes I'm like, I was an athlete. We had very short stuff growing up. I'm not even claiming like I'm perfect, but I'm like, look, there's sometimes where we look so stupid as women and nobody tells us. And I'm like, we'll have these like wives and mothers dressed half naked. I'm like, this just looks. Now, look, I'm not even saying it's okay for the younger women. It's not, but I'm like, it just looks especially stupid when you're over like. It's like you're 40 years old, lady. You've had like half a century to figure this out.
No, absolutely. And the Bible talks about that a woman who's beautiful but doesn't exercise modesty is like a gold ring in the snout of a pig, right? It's like pearls before swine, or giving what is holy to dogs. But in this case, the actual verbiage that's used applied to modesty is a gold ring, so something of precious worth, but just wasted. So even if it's a young woman, she should dress modestly. And people, the pushback is always like, well, what about the men? And that's the whole problem with our society, in my opinion. Is that, again, we make every exception the rule, every exception the norm, every footnote the headline. Here's the deal. Men should be modest too. And there are some men who are going to the gym shirtless and blah, 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 whatever. But can we just admit for a second that right now, the big problem in the West is not abusive patriarchy, but rampant feminism. It is not immodest men, but immodest women. Like I think you have to be able to say the standard is transcendent and it applies across the board, young, old, guy, girl. But you have to be able to say in your time and place, in your moment in history, you have to be able to say, this is a unique problem. Right now, the unique problem that we have is not a bunch of men being patriarchal tyrants. I think that has been a problem at times past. Now, even that I think is revisionist history and wasn't quite as bad as people make it sound. But there have been problems like that. Right now, the problem is not that men have all their wives on leashes.
Well, and why don't men have a right to like go out and not be bombarded with women's bodies? Because there are men that actually want to be faithful and loyal to their wives. Right. And you guys can't go anywhere without yoga pants, booty shorts, and these half naked chicks. It's like, don't they have a right to go out in public and not see you butt naked?
Great point.
And then what about children? Like children need to witness this now? This is getting embarrassing.
Yeah, for a lot of families, if you are a Christian family, what it means that these days, you just do a lot less in public. My family and I, we have places that we go, and, a lot of what the children do, is we have places like there's a farm that we like going to, it's called Sweet Eats Farm, and they have a petting zoo, and the kids get to ride the horses, and, and our kids, again, they're itty bitty, which is awesome. They're super, super cute. And so we have a blast, but most of it is hanging out with like-minded people that we trust who are part of our church community. So my kids are having a blast like every day of the week. My wife right now is on a play date with the kids with another woman in the church, and they're doing fun stuff. They've got like a bounce house inside because it's cold right now, and they're jumping off the walls, and Christmas decorations everywhere. Our kid, so I don't want to sit here and play the world's smallest violin. You can do it, and I think that's just what I said earlier. I want to white pill Christians and conservatives, and say, okay, the red pill, you got to take it. You can't put your head in the sand. Things are tough. They are tough. But you can do it. You can do it. A lot of women are Jezebel. They suck. But by the grace of God, there are some women, and I know them. I pastor them. There are some women who are the salt of the earth. They are beautiful inwardly and out. They're modest. They love the Lord, and some of them are single, and they are looking forward to loving a man and submitting to his authority in a godly way. Now, I'm not saying they're a dime a dozen, because they're not. They're rare. But you can have that life that your ancestors had. It's much harder to have. I admit that, much harder. Economically, it's harder. Legally, it's harder. There's more risk. There's more danger. If a man marries and has children at a legal level, he is immediately at a disadvantage, and everything is a risk. His whole life could be ruined. I know the red pill. I'm aware. And all that is true. The red pill movement has correctly assessed the situation, but they have no solution. Getting a vasectomy at 20 and never marrying is not a solution. That is the pathway to literally end the human race. That's not a solution. So we need a red pill, but we need a white pill. God, that's just the beauty again of the scripture. God gives us the truth of the situation, and oftentimes it's grim, but he also gives us hope. He doesn't only give us truth, he gives us hope. And the hope is his son, Jesus Christ. He is the hope of the world. And if we submit to his lordship, and we're saved not by our good works, but by his grace, trusting in him alone and his finished work on Calvary, dying in our place, the death we deserved, then there's hope. And we seek to obey him, not to earn his love, but knowing that we freely have his love by grace, and we're obeying him as a response of gratitude, and not just privately, but in every realm of life. Little by little by little, the world can change. I believe that. I have to believe that. If that's not true, then it's not just that I'm going to be depressed, but if that's not true, then I have no basis for believing the Christian faith. I mean, like, what am I doing? I'm a pastor. I guess I can, I don't know. I mean, I've got 75,000 followers on YouTube. Maybe, Pearl, you could help me find, some kind of fringe entertainment that I could start doing videos on, that instead of the pastor stuff that I've been doing. But like, I mean, really, what am I going to do? This is my life. This is what I believe. And it's not just my livelihood, for practical reasons, but I believe this down to the marrow in my bone, that Jesus is Lord, that he's changed the world. The whole world changed. We literally, when we do the calendar, there is before Christ and after Christ. Like this, there's no human being who has ever walked the earth that has changed the world like Jesus. You can love him, hate him, bless him, curse him, but he is God. There's no one like him. He is the Lord of all the earth. He changed the world in 2,000 years. I'm living in a grim moment, but I'm fighting for his glory. I'm fighting for my grandchildren and their future. And we might be in a dim moment, but 2,000 years, he's been winning. And the next 2,000 years, he's the victor. That's what I believe.
Well, thank you very much for coming on.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
It's an honor. Thank you for having me.
Guys, make sure you go subscribe. Tell them one more time where they can find you.
Just search Response Ministries on YouTube.
Yeah, guys, make sure you go subscribe. Make sure you like the video on your way out. And also let me know who you would want next time on the sit down. Thank you very much for coming on. I will talk to you guys next time.